And now let's take the event forward with a talk that we've been waiting for quite some time, and that will be brought out by someone who's traveled quite a distance to be with us today. I would love to have your attention as I welcome on stage Mr. Dominic Alafaci. Can I please welcome Dominic up on stage? Alafaci, Dominic Alafaci. Thank you so much, sir, for helping me with that. Dominic will be speaking about redefining advisory practice through changing regulatory environment, international perspective. Dominic has over 40 years of experience in large and small financial service organizations, a former director of the Financial Advice Association of Australia and Ombudsman Services, as well as retained by a regulator and institutions as an expert witness in financial service matters. He is a life member of Financial Advice Association of Australia and runs a boutique financial service firm in Melbourne, where he has spent a decade on Talkback Radio as a resident financial advice specialist. Please put your hands together to welcome Mr. Dominic up on stage.
Hello, is my mic working? Thank you, Yukti. Ladies and gentlemen, I've got to say I've done a lot of public speaking in my life, but I'm not happy tonight, but I am happy. I've never followed such an inspirational person as Dr. Betty, and I've just been in this country for 12 hours, I suppose. So I have a cultural tsunami and then an emotional tsunami listening to her. So my advice to you are two things. Do what she says, and to the regulator, which you'll understand at the end, I would say, according to Dr. Betty, learning doesn't happen sitting in the office. So listen to ARIA, people. Now, I assume the green button to change the slides? Thank you. I've got plenty of time, so I'm happy to make this interactive. I'm going to give you an analysis from my very short period of time here in India, but my probably nearly 40 years of experience in Australia, and it's amazing. The terminology is slightly different, but the problems are exactly the same. And I remember probably 30 years ago with one of my friends, when the Financial Planning Association, as it was then, merged with the Association of Independent Financial Advisors, which created the Financial Planning Association, which 25 years later became the Financial Advisors Association, merging with another group. So we've finally got our act together in Australia. But the regulatory environment has been interesting. So, my first question is, why do we live in an environment of evolving regulation? Well, this is an ad that was in the 1980s, late 1980s. And it's not an 80% return. I'm sorry, it's not a very high quality ad. But it says down the bottom, estate mortgage, high returns, nice and safe. Now, as financial advisors, does that sound right to you? High returns, nice and safe? Does anybody think that's right? Hold your hand up. The regulator let those ads go on. I feel sorry for the regulator. They had limited resources and they didn't really understand what we understand as professionals. In 1988, estate mortgage had huge ads on TV with a giraffe, high returns but nice and safe. And it made us feel good, made investors feel good. And I'll never forget the day I was walking up Collins Street in Melbourne with one of my colleagues, and the company I was working for then got bought out by Deutsche Bank. And we were looking for a bigger premises because they won't expand. We're only a small firm, it's about probably 120, mainly stockbrokers, but a few financial advisors like myself. And I walked past the building where Estate Mortgage had their building. And I said to the Collier's international estate agent who was showing my colleague and I the offices, I said to him jokingly, "Oh, we'll take their office, please." He said, "What do you mean? They're strong. They've got ads on TV. They're writing the 80% growth last year, Dominic. Didn't you see in the paper?" I said, "They'll be broke within 6 months because the prevailing rates of interest at the time were 14, let's say, we had high interest rates back then, and they were paying 18 net. So they must have been trying to charge 19 or 20 their distribution costs to pay 18. So, of course, a few months later, they collapsed, leaving investors with losses of hundreds of millions of dollars. Then there was another chap. I'm not picking on this chap. He was just a property spruiker called Henry Kay. Now, Henry Kay had these seminars around the country, get rich, buy property. And Australia's got affordable property, had then, not so much so now. And Henry wasn't caught under the Corporations Act because property isn't a security for some unknown reason. I'm not quite sure what it's like in India, but in Australia, it's the biggest investment someone makes, and then they're what we call superannuation or 401ks or your SIPs or whatever else you call them here, are the second biggest investment you usually have. So for years, we'll call them spruikers like Henry, would go around with seminars, buy this property, sell the loan, sell the property himself, of course, which is pretty conflicted. And to this day, in 2024, it's a disgrace in Australia that property is not a nationally controlled investment. It's all state-based legislation. In the early days, securities are all state-based, and then they had the National Company Securities Commission and all of those rules. We have the Corporations Act around Australia. So that's a big problem. So that's why we need regulation. Now, up in Queensland, I don't mean to pick on these people. If they only moderated their employees better, Emmanuel and Julie Casamatis in 2004 geared mums and dad investors into share market trusts. And that was a good idea, modest. A bit of gearing's good to build wealth, everyone knows that. But they borrowed on top of the purchased units with margin loans and invested again. And they often used the family home as the security for the first loan to buy the units in the unit trusts. Now the GFC hit and it hit the fan, to quote the common phrase. To do it the second time, the gearing was evil, I thought. And I personally saw a copy of an advice document, which we called Statements of Advice now in Australia, where a lovely gentleman, I was asked by his brother, who's a solicitor in Melbourne, next time I was up in Sydney, please go and have a look at and visit my brother, who's a truck driver. And he earns $80,000 a year, and they had a large block of land that the family owned, inherited, and it had gone up in value because a freeway was going to be put through there. So some smart aleck salesperson from Storm did a plan where he was going to receive $400,000 in commission. Okay? And there was $5 million worth of assets into the market in one go, just before the GFC. It was a disaster, and it was geared to probably 90% or 80%. Now, if you took the zeros off that, that'd be fine. But the regulator said that that was a compliant statement of advice. So, as Dr. Betty said, you won't learn anything sitting in the office. They do have a hard job, but we need to help them understand that that is wrong. Now, has anybody seen anything like this in India? Has that happened here, may I ask? Sorry? It does happen. Does that anger you? That you get lambasted with the same bad name that spruikers are using to make money on high quality professionals? Does that get you upset?
Absolutely.
You're all well, tell the regulator in a nice way. Regulators are good people. Are there any regulators in the room tonight? Where's this? Ah, damn. I would have wished it, because I was trying to pump up their tyres. I was trying to be nice. So, regulation sometimes fails because that statement of advice was compliant, because there was no quantity of the commission There was no cap. So as provided you tick the boxes and the client signed the form, you could destroy them if the market crashed. And that's what happened. I might add, before I go on about the Commonwealth Bank, Storm Financial used to take their clients on cruises around the world to incentivise them. I forgot to put that in the slide. Come with us, we'll make you rich. And a gold-plated Rolls Royce, etc. So you can see why it was attractive to people who saw someone who was taking them on a cruise or taking them to Venice or to Las Vegas or wherever. I'm not sure where the venues were, to be honest. But you could see it was attractive to people who wanted to have a better life. And we all know that greed and fear are the two biggest drivers in human existence. I think we know that. Between 2006 and 2010, the Commonwealth Bank in Australia incentivised management and their financial planning teams to basically provide inappropriate advice. It was wrong. They also charged ongoing fees for no advice. So in Australia we have an upfront system, a set-up cost, a statement of advice, a brokerage fee, whatever you want to call it, and then ongoing advice for the care and attention that clients need as they have all their ups and downs of living a life. And we all call that financial advice in Australia, ongoing financial advice. Other financial institutions, including Westpac Banking Corporation, ANZ and National Bank, were also convicted of bad behaviour. And after hundreds of cases being dealt with by the Financial Industry Complaint Service and the calls from consumer groups, there was finally a royal commission into, wait for this, the misconduct in the banking, superannuation and financial services industry in 2017. Now, I wish the journalists who were here earlier, are they still here? Because they reported this very badly. In Australia, they did a terrible job. When you have an inquiry into misconduct, 99% of the time, the actions are going to be bad because you're inquiring into misconduct. They didn't have an inquiry into the conduct of financial services. That was the misconduct. So all of the cases in the newspaper were Joe Bloggs and Mary Brown did the wrong thing, because that's what the terms of the inquiry was corralled into. And then in 2019, we had another body, the FACEA, the Financial Advisors Standards Ethics Authority was created, and it introduced a whole range of ethics and stuff that we already knew for 20 years. We wrote the damn stuff. We submitted it, and then they turned it into legislation and then scared the hell out of advisors who were trying to come into the industry because there were civil penalties now. So it was a little bit of an overkill. The pendulum had swung too far. You needed regulation, but then again, the Code of Ethics states that advisors must always act in a way that demonstrates, realises and promotes the following values: trustworthiness, competence, honesty, fairness and diligence. There's not a person in this room, I don't think, that wouldn't eagerly adopt those values, and by doing so we all know our advice would be appropriate for the client. If you adopt those 5 values, what can go wrong? Seriously, can anyone see a set of circumstances where it wouldn't be in the client's best interest? Anybody? The GFC, maybe? That's just a timing thing. If you had a good plan, you should be able to survive it, and most clients did. There could be a systemic issue, which was something the GFC did shake the systems of the banking system and the broking system and the custodial system, and it really frightened everybody. But overall, that is a bulletproof set of values. Many would argue that those 5 values and surveillance by the regulator would be enough. But no, they did a bit more. And the introduction of these additional legislative, I call it red tape, had unintended consequences. And I'll use my ski helmet analogy. Now, we live in Melbourne and there's a couple of ski resorts not far from where we live, and my wife here, Eve, and I, we're not great skiers, but we like going. We've noticed there's thousands of Indians come over all the time to see snow for the first time. I don't know, do you have ski resorts in India? You do? Okay, well there's mustn't be close to where these people live because they come out to Mount Buller and there's thousands of them every year, which is great. We love it. We love their custom, we love their rupees. So let's look at the ski helmet analogy. It's going to work. Now, this is what happens in the current world. That's an ugly photo of me at the snow. Hello, I'd like to buy a ski helmet. I go into the shop. And the salesperson says, okay, Dominic, no problem. However, before I show you your helmet options, I have to ask you, when was the last time you had your bindings checked? A while ago. Why? Well, what about your ski boots? Are they correctly fitted and in good condition? What about your goggles? Have you had them checked? Like in your gloves? Do you want me to check them for you to see if they're good? Do you have robust stocks? What about your skis? When was the last time you had them waxed? And are they fit for purpose? And lastly, do you have appropriate jacket and trousers? I say to that person, please stop. All I want to do is buy a ski helmet. I'm no great skier, but I know what I'm doing. The salesperson has to respond under the corporations law in Australia if they want to not get sued, have charges pressed against them. If you don't provide me with a review of your overall situation, then there's no way of knowing if your helmet will be appropriate, nor will you know if you're equipped to ski safely. And I say to that salesperson, let me out of here, you're crazy. What I'd like to see, and there's some chances of having this, that's Lindsay Vonn, one of the best skiers in the world, an American champion. And I go into the ski shop. I wish I was as good as Lindsay Vonn. We all do. And the salesperson says, okay, I have two types of basic helmets, Dominic. One that Lindsay Vonn used, and she survived a serious crash of 100 kilometres an hour in Cortina in Italy last year, and she went away just with a bruised arm. She went right through the netting, hit her head, but she's fine. They've got the latest safety features, including carbon fibre and titanium parts, and they're normally $400, but I can do one for you just under $200. We've got them on special at the moment. Or we've got our standard helmets, which are good value, but they're not as robust as the carbon fibre ones, and they start at $150. And I say, I'll have the Lindsay Vonn one thing. I make a decision based on information as a rational person. That's what we need to have in financial services. It seems to me that where ARIA is where we were in Australia about 15 years ago. And we worked very hard as an association. Good quality advisors, and I remember even 20 years before that, a friend of mine asked me, would I mind helping out in the Financial Planning Association? And he said, I was going to be the treasurer. I was a trained accountant, I am a trained accountant, and I said, I'll do the books. So I got where will I meet the person who's retiring? He said, in the car park. I said, in the car park? Went downstairs and he opened the boot of his car, gave me this box of ledgers. It was a long time ago. I did have an Apple IIc computer at that time, but this is a long time ago. And I took the book and I thought, gee, this association is a really not-for-profit. It was really basic ledgers. So we put it together, and I wasn't the only one. Far more dexterous people than myself helped build the association up, and it was we're very proud of where we are. But that's what we'd like to see in the real world. Does that make sense to everybody so far? The contrast between the two situations? Can I ask a serious question? Where are you at the moment? Are you obliged as an independent financial advisor to do a comprehensive summary of the client, or can you carve out and just do a smaller piece of advice? Where are you at the moment, professionally and under the law? Please, if we could have an answer from... We might just get a microphone if we could. Thank you.
I think there's some good news and bad news on that one,
Okay.
right? I think the good news would be that I think our regulations are probably way up there along with everybody, including Australia.
They are very similar.
I don't know about similar because we don't really know about Australia, but
So
very clearly we have a fiduciary standard that's built into the regulation.
Yes.
So by regulation, we have to keep clients' best interest.
Good.
Okay, that is regulated.
But can you concentrate on one thing without providing with advice on things they didn't ask you about?
So you have to do a risk profiling,
Yes.
irrespective of what the client wants.
Yes.
After that, can you provide him a single product? You probably can. I don't know. Other people can chime in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you. That's the part I've done a little bit of research, and it seems to be that's the conclusion I've come to. In Australia, it's less easy to do that. So thank you for your response. So we all know Bernie Madoff, who robbed billions of dollars in America. Leading financial journalist claims that he was running the biggest Ponzi scheme. Harry Markopoulos, a fraud examiner, wrote articles about it, sent them to the regulator saying, these numbers are made up, and we all know he wasn't making them up. On the 17th floor of the Lipstick building in New York, he had a printing press that was printing out, he had a dot matrix printer that was printing out fake statements and distributing to people for years. So you can't... What do you do with a Bernie Madoff? Or in Sydney, there was another lady, poor lady's killed herself, we think. Melissa Caddick in 2020. She stole funds in Australia from unsuspecting clients for about $23 million, and they found her severed foot off the South Coast beach in Sydney. Apparently she committed suicide. Well, did she or did she not chop her foot off and go and live in the Bahamas? We don't know, but I think she's dead. But that's the general story. So I really feel for the regulators, and I wish the regulator was in the room to hear this, because whilst I'm critical of them, there is no ethics course. There is no list of red tape checklists that you can do to protect consumers from really bad people. That's it. There's really nothing you can do. We have to accept that the rotten apples are going to be there. And probably Dr. Betty said, some people don't have the chance in life. I don't know about Caddick and Madoff, but maybe their psychological makeup and whatever motivates people to steal and be cruel to other human beings. I'm not a psychiatrist to give you an opinion on that, but maybe it's just in their DNA. We don't know. But you have to accept there's going to be bad people in society. Why do you take the other 98% of advisors down? And there's an expression in Australia, throw the baby out with the bathwater. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So I feel for the regulators. It's a difficult task. And I worked on the equivalent of your disputes resolution service. I got asked by one of my co-directors of the Financial Planning Association one day, Dominic, the regulators in Melbourne, would you like to do this job? I said, I'm happy to go to this job. Next minute, I was by accident, when you volunteer, these things happen to you, as I'm sure all the people around here know, the directors. I was representing every stockbroker and every financial planner in Australia, and there was 35,000 of them, in dealing with this industry body called the Financial Industry Complaint Service, which basically became the Ombudsman Service after several years. And I had financial planners wanting to kill me. Stockbrokers didn't care. They were commission-based and they sort of had a bit of a carve-out. But the true financial planners are getting upset. They would have a bill of $395, I think it was, that they would have to pay if a consumer complained regardless of whether there was any validity in the claim. Even if they won the complaint, they proved there was no wrongdoing, they'd be out $395. And some people said to me, if I have 1,000 clients, I could be out $395,000 in 1 year. One company said, I said, I know it's hard. So we've finally improved that a little bit. And over the years, the regulator, it's a semi-regulated body. It's an industry-funded authority set up through the legislation. So I think yours are the same. But that was a real, people they were in revolt. The financial planners said, I've run a good business. I haven't had a complaint for 25 years. Why do I have to be put in this position because of the Commonwealth Bank or Bernie Madoff or all these other big institutions that have done the wrong thing? So that was a real problem. But we've come a long way. And in summary on this, I'd like to say, you have adopted a code of ethics, it sounds like, with those values. Is that a fair summary? That's what we've done, so continue with that. Rid yourselves of all material conflicts of interest, not immaterial. If you're a director of a company that owns that company over there that you buy supplies from, as long as you're not making exorbitant profits or it's influencing you, then that's reasonable. There are always conflicts of interest. Engage with the regulator, and this is the most important thing. Number 3, and highlight the unintended consequences that may lead to counterproductive outcomes. In a genuine attempt to make, and this is the crazy part, and I said something at the beginning that Dr. Betty said, which is relevant, and that is, you won't learn anything sitting in the office. You've got to speak to you people. And that's what this government has done. In Australia, we have 2 major parties, the Liberal Party Conservative and the Labor Party, which are a democratic socialist party. And with socialism, it varies from modest socialism to quite Marxist socialism. At the moment, we're getting towards the upper left. They're quite crazy. So in an attempt to make financial services more affordable, in their wisdom, the government, it's not the regulator now, this is the government, has come up with this new term called qualified financial advisors, which is an unintended consequence of them trying to do the right thing. These new qualified advisors don't have any qualifications, they're call centre people. Now we've spent 30 years, like you are going to do, you're probably 15 years into it, 20 years into it. How would you feel in 10 years' time if the government says we're going to make it cheaper for everybody, we're going to introduce qualified advisors who don't work on commission, but they get paid by the institutions? This is crazy. The one thing is they won't receive commission, which I think is a win, but their advice by definition is 100% conflicted. Just think you work on, there's a spelling mistake I think in here, but let's say you work for one of these big industry funds, a union-based industry fund that has got a lot of power in Australia. If you're working on their call centre and you have a person that's got a modest amount of money in that superannuation fund, but that person has a bank loan, they haven't paid off their home loan yet, how will that company instruct their advisor to take the money out of the super fund when the person retires and pay off their mortgage so they can get the age pension, the government pension, which is what would happen if they did that? I just can't see it happening. So there's a huge conflict of interest. So whilst they're serious, they're not as funny as Back to the Future, which is one of my favourite movies of all time. Unfortunately, the new rules are going to take us back to a period of where there are tied representatives. When I first started in 1981, I was a tied representative of a life insurance company. I lasted about 12 months and said to my lovely boss, I said, listen, I can't just sell one insurance company's products. Do you mind if I get a few agencies? So I was called a multi-agent back then. And then I started refunding commissions and charging a flat fee, and now I'm completely fee for service. But it's taking us back, not 25 years, what's 1981 from now? It's a long time. Anyway, so these new qualified advisors are a warning. I hope you don't have the same problem in India as we have here. We've worked really hard, like you lovely people have, to build a profession, and then we get kicked in the pants. Now, there is a chance they might change it, but as I said before, how will the financial institutions allow qualified advisors to recommend, there's a spelling mistake, I'm sorry, to the consumer to withdraw their money from the fund if it's in the client's best interest? And there's going to be thousands of them. Like in your country, advisors were leaving in flocks because of the higher regulation, more exams. We had a FACER exam. I had to sit an exam, it was just stupid. But I did it, paid my $1,000 and ticked another box. How it's going to save a consumer from a Bernie Madoff or anyone like that, that's got me. So I'm happy to take some questions, or if you'd like to go home early, be my guest. I can see we're all worn out, so I might head off. Yes, sir.
So thanks for that perspective on Australia. How does it work actually when there are employees at advisory firms? Are they also set up for tight regulation as per the principle, or is it much lighter?
The principals have the ultimate responsibility. We have the financial service licensee, but the individuals now can face civil penalties and even criminal. Criminal, I don't mind. If you steal money, that's fair enough. Doesn't matter whether you're an employee or an employer. But the advisors are quite frightened that they can have civil penalties against them under these new rules in response to thieves and vagabonds that stole money that you wouldn't let into your own house if you knew that the type of people they were, if that makes sense. So yes, it's quite onerous on the advisors. So work with the regulators. My advice is because they're in the office too much. And if you can get to give them a financial plan, sit down with the regulators, do a free financial plan for all of them. I think you've been working on that, Renee, you told me. Insist, but before they join any discussion groups, panels, advisory groups, working groups, that they have an experience with a qualified advisor. And do it for free. If it costs you $1,000, spend the $1,000. As an association, you'll all benefit. So I don't know how many regulators you have, but if you've got 200 maybe that are involved in this space in your country, I don't know, 20, call it 100. Spend $100,000 of your time and educate them that we're not Melissa Caddicks or Bernie Madoffs of the world.
Thank you for showing the last slide. I think that was very interesting. So basically, you helped us.
We've worked all this way, and now, for political reasons perhaps, I'm not sure, I'm not a politician, it's come all the way back. So don't let that happen to you. Get to the precipice and then stop, don't jump.
So I presume that would have happened because there was a significant unadvised population whom perhaps that...
Look, some people say it's because the Labor government, which supports the union movement, and the union funds are the biggest industry funds in Australia, they probably got 60% of the marketplace, they want to do a favour to the people who got them into government. Now that's a cynical view, but I'm a cynic, so that's what I believe. Other people say it's for the greater good of consumers, but there's easier ways to do this. The Financial Planning Association the Financial Advice Association is asking the government to consider a rebate for retirees from the government to get paid advice. Now, what do you think our chances are of getting the government to pay us, or to pay a rebate to the consumers to pay for financial advice? 5%? So I think it's not going to happen. Does that answer your question?
So basically the money is the issue. In one form, the money... See, it's always the consumer who pays.
Yes.
even in the new model which is being suggested, although it's the company which is paying, the principal is paying,
Well,
but eventually...
They would argue, no, we're going to do it for free because we love our customers. But you're right, it's cross-subsidisation. You're absolutely right. But the interesting key feature here is that they're employing unskilled, untrained people who are on much lower wages than we professionals should be on to fill the gap. And they'll be reading from a script, like the old telephone salespeople. That's the thing I'm worried about. I've been a bit extreme there and unkind, but it's for the analogy. They're not paying someone like you who's studied, got your qualifications, and, looks after clients. They're using call centre people to answer a set of questions to help consumers. So I think they're getting out of it, they're saving some money. So does that make sense?
Yeah, so is the Indian approach, I don't know how much you're aware of it, the Indian approach is a hybrid approach, which is to let both the models kind of coexist.
Well, we had that. We still have, you can go to a product supplier and get conflicted advice, and that's fine. We were happy for that. And that's what the industry funds provided. They did have some carve-outs, and some of the life insurance companies as well. So that's fine. You can have the two. You can have I call the more independent professional approach, which represents probably 10% of the market, and the other conflicted approach, which is probably 60%, and there's some in the middle as well. So we do coexist in Australia, but what's happened is after many years of working hard to build up the independence, the non-conflicted part, this government has decided to say, well, we're going to give a big shot in the arm to the tied agents, the conflicted part. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you so much for that.
Pleasure.
So, I think...
Finished or over time? No, last few minutes. Last question then.
Okay.
2 questions.
So I think what we have here, in India is that the people that you see in the room, we are not allowed to get any commissions,
Yes.
neither are we allowed to provide commissions, etc. to
Yes.
our staff. So and that's a great thing. That's what we love about the profession, because that makes us non-conflicted.
Yes.
But the thing is that we are small. We are a very, very small portion of the overall product market, which is primarily driven by
Yes.
commissions. It may not be conflicted because a lot of those commissions are people who will give it for multiple entities. So they may not be tied agents, so they are allowed to do multiple manufacturers so that they can get their commissions from anywhere. So to that much extent, the conflict might be less. My point is, I think at a certain point in Australia, or at least that is my understanding, that you were doing away with commissions completely.
Yes.
And that has changed recently, is it?
No, the group of us, there's 2 groups that don't accept commissions. Probably about 40% of the advisory group doesn't accept commissions, and there's a subset in there, like myself, who is independent in the sense that they don't have any relationship with an institution. So you can be working for, I'll make this up, Standard Chartered Bank, and they refund all the commissions, okay? So you're deemed to be not independent, but conflict-free. Now there might be a little bit of wiggle room, please use our products, but there's no direct conflict. Then you've got the ones like myself, there's a very small group of companies like myself who don't accept any commission, refund it all to the client if we get it, and we're purely professional advisors. So we do have a large group of people who are non-conflicted because they don't give advice, so they don't receive commissions, but they are deemed to have a conflict of interest because they're owned by an institution. So we've moved, which is a great thing. That's why I said on the board before, give away material conflicts of interest. Like if you're driven like an old life insurance salesman, the next person that passes the mirror test, If they fog the mirror, they're a client. We've moved away from that. I can't believe I've got 6 questions on the graveyard shift after such a fantastic presentation like Dr. Betty. Golly, another question over here, and then I think that'll be the last one.
Sir, I just wanted to know, because you've been an advisor for so long, how have the numbers in your industry grown? Have more people wanted to move to your kind of profession? Has it grown in size?
Great question. We had a parabolic rise, and now it's fallen off a cliff. Because all the extra facia standards and codes and getting people to do exams that had 30 years experience and 40... Look, I did it because I love a challenge, but it was just ridiculous. I mean, the people who were questioning me on financial planning, I have more understanding of financial planning under my fingernails than the whole lot of them put together, but I just shut up and did the exam, paid the $1,000. So because of that, a lot of older people, I'm 65 coming up, they said, oh, I don't want to do it, I'm going to hang up my shingles. Many people are writing, I'm going to sell property because it's unregulated. I'm going to sell IT because it's unregulated. Why should I break my neck and then after 30 years be required to face possible civil charges if I don't ask the helmet questions? When the client doesn't want to buy all that stuff, they just want a simple transaction, and you could be deemed to be, depending on the compliance lawyers who want to scare you and get more fees. Sorry to all the compliance lawyers in the room who advise us, or you better do it this way because you might actually be subject to a litigation. So they're conflicted as well. So leaving my sarcasm aside just for a minute, the answer to your question is they went up to 34,000 and then they dropped probably to 14,000, I think. Probably since 2017, I think was the peak. Just before, actually, probably COVID was the last thing that hit the nail on the head. No worries.
Thank you so much, Dominic. I think the live examples that you picked just made it also relatable, and therefore the thoughts, even at the fag end of the day, he was concerned that, am I addressing the graveyard shift? And I promised him that we won't just give him a full house, but also a group of people absolutely alert till the last minute to gather whatever they can. So a huge round of applause for you to pull this off so well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yuki.